Every 13 seconds, someone in the world dies from drug addiction. Not a statistic, a person, someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. 271 million people worldwide use drugs. 35 million of them are suffering from drug use disorders, and the number is not falling, it is rising. This documentary is not about drugs. It is about the human beings inside the addiction, about how they got there, about what kept them there, and about whether there is a way back. Because there is a way back, and not enough people are talking about it. Let us begin with the numbers, because the numbers are extraordinary. The global drug trade is worth $500 billion per year. It is the third largest illegal economy on the planet, only behind arms trafficking and human trafficking. $500 billion generated by human suffering every single year. In the United States alone, 107,000 people died from drug overdoses in 2023, more than the entire population of a small city. Gone in 1 year from one country. In the United Kingdom, drug-related deaths have reached their highest level in 30 years. In Australia, ice, crystal methamphetamine, has become the most seized drug at the border. In Pakistan, 7.6 million people are drug-dependent. The youngest are children, some as young as 10 years old. 10 years old and already dependent on a substance that will take everything from them. This is not a problem of weak people or bad choices. This is a crisis of human beings in unbearable pain, looking for relief in the only place they could find it. To understand addiction, we must first understand what these substances are and what they do to the human brain. There are 5 categories that account for most of the world's addiction crisis. The first is alcohol, the most socially accepted drug on the planet. Legal, celebrated, everywhere, and responsible for 3 million deaths every single year. More than AIDS, more than tuberculosis, more than violence. The second is opioids, heroin, fentanyl, prescription painkillers. Opioids killed 80,000 Americans in 2021 alone. Fentanyl is 100 times more potent than morphine. A dose the size of a few grains of salt is enough to kill. The third is cocaine. 21 million people worldwide use cocaine. It floods the brain with dopamine, creating a euphoria so intense that everything else feels gray by comparison. The fourth is cannabis, the most widely used illegal drug in the world. 192 million users globally, and while many use it recreationally, heavy adolescent use has been linked to increased risk of psychosis and long-term cognitive impairment. And the fifth, the one that is destroying communities from Australia to Pakistan, from the Philippines to the United States, is ice. Crystal methamphetamine, the most destructive drug humanity has ever produced. Ice is not like other drugs. Other drugs borrow from tomorrow. Ice destroys tomorrow entirely. Crystal methamphetamine releases up to 1,200% more dopamine than the brain produces naturally. For comparison, sex releases 200%. Food releases 150%. Ice releases 1,200% in one hit. The brain experiences a pleasure so overwhelming, so completely beyond anything natural life can provide, that everything else, every relationship, every ambition, every reason to live becomes invisible beside it. And then it ends. And the brain, which has just been flooded with 12 times its natural capacity, crashes hard. The depression that follows is not ordinary sadness. It is the complete absence of the ability to feel pleasure from anything: food, love, sunlight, music, Nothing. Because the brain's dopamine system has been temporarily destroyed, and the only thing that makes the gray go away is more ice. That is the trap. Not weakness, not moral failure, biology. A brain that has been hijacked by the most powerful chemical stimulant ever introduced to the human nervous system. To understand why addiction is so difficult to escape, we need to understand what it does to the brain. The human brain has a reward system. It evolved over millions of years to motivate survival behavior. Eat food, dopamine reward. Connect with others, dopamine reward. Achieve something, dopamine reward. This system kept our species alive. But drugs hijack it. They do not work with the reward system. They override it. A 2019 study published in Nature found that repeated drug use physically changes the structure of the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, for impulse control, for the ability to choose long-term well-being over short-term relief. Addiction does not just change how a person feels, it changes how a person thinks, how they decide, how they see the future. The person trapped in addiction is not making bad choices from a healthy brain. They are making the only choices a damaged brain can see. This is why telling an addict to simply stop is like telling a person with a broken leg to simply walk. The instrument of choice has been compromised. First, it must be healed. Nobody chooses addiction. Nobody wakes up one morning and decides to lose everything. So how does it begin? Research consistently identifies 3 primary pathways into addiction. The first is pain. A 2020 study published in the American Journal of Psychiatry found that 75% of people with substance use disorders had experienced significant trauma before their addiction began. Childhood abuse, neglect, loss, violence. The drug did not create the pain. The pain was already there. The drug simply made it, temporarily, bearable. The second pathway is environment. Children who grow up in households where drugs are present are 45 to 79% more likely to develop substance use disorders than those who do not. Not because addiction is inherited, but because the brain learns what it grows up around, what is normal, what is available, what works when nothing else does. The third pathway is the critical one. It is adolescence. The teenage brain is not a small adult brain. It is a fundamentally different organ. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for long-term thinking, risk assessment, and impulse control, is not fully developed until the age of 25. A teenager who begins using drugs is introducing a hijacking substance into a brain that does not yet have the architecture to resist it. This is why, the earlier the use begins, the deeper the addiction goes. And this is why what happens in schools, in homes, in friendships, in the years between 10 and 20, determines so much of what happens after. It rarely begins with ice. It rarely begins with heroin. It begins with something smaller, a cigarette behind the school, a vape passed between friends, something that feels harmless, something that feels normal. Today, vaping is the fastest growing addiction among young people on the planet. In the United States, 1 in 4 high school students vapes regularly. In the United Kingdom, vaping among teenagers has tripled in 3 years. The industry designed it that way. Fruit flavors, bright colors, devices that look like USB sticks, small enough to hide in a closed fist. A single vape pod can contain as much nicotine as 20 cigarettes. And nicotine is not a soft drug. It is one of the most addictive substances known to science. More addictive than alcohol, more addictive than cocaine. When a young brain becomes dependent on nicotine, something changes. The reward system learns that substances work. that relief can be inhaled, that the feeling of need can be answered quickly. Research from Columbia University found that young people who smoke are 3 times more likely to try cannabis. Those who use cannabis regularly are significantly more likely to experiment with harder substances. This is called the gateway effect. Not inevitable, not guaranteed, but real. And at the end of that gateway, for some, is not just addiction. It is needle sharing. It is HIV. It is AIDS. In 2022, the United Nations reported that people who inject drugs are 35 times more likely to be living with HIV than the general population. 35 times. From a vape, passed between friends, behind a school. Nobody saw that coming. Nobody ever does. This is why the beginning matters. This is why the small things matter. Because small things do not always stay small. Schools are where it often begins. Not because schools are dangerous, but because schools are where young people first navigate the most powerful force in adolescent psychology, the need to belong. Research from the University of Michigan found that peer influence accounts for up to 80% of first-time drug use in adolescence. Not dealers, not strangers, friends. The person who first offers a drug to a young person is almost always someone they trust, someone they want to impress, someone whose acceptance feels more important than anything a parent ever said. Because at 15, belonging to the group is survival. The teenage brain does not weigh long-term health consequences against short-term social acceptance. It does not have that capacity yet. It weighs belonging against exclusion, and exclusion to a teenage brain feels like death. So they try it, just once, just to belong, and for most, that is all it is. But for some, the ones carrying pain they cannot name, the ones whose homes are not safe, the ones whose brains respond differently to that first rush, once is enough to begin everything. Addiction does not arrive all at once. It arrives slowly, then all at once. Stage 1 is experimentation, curiosity, social pressure, a single moment. The drug works. Whatever pain was there temporarily disappears. Whatever anxiety existed temporarily quiets. Whatever emptiness was present temporarily fills. The brain notes this. Stage 2 is regular use. The person returns, not because they are weak, because the brain remembered what worked. At this stage, most people still believe they are in control, and most still are. Stage 3 is risky use. Use begins to affect relationships, performance, health. But the drug is now doing something the person cannot do without. Managing emotions, providing relief, making life feel survivable. Stage 4 is dependence. The brain has restructured itself around the substance. Without it, the person does not feel normal. They feel sick, anxious, desperate. This is not a choice anymore. This is biology. Stage 5 is addiction. The person has lost the freedom to stop. Not the desire, the freedom. They often want to stop, desperately, but the brain they are trying to stop with is the same brain the drug has compromised. They are trying to escape a trap, using the very mind the trap was built inside. Addiction does not happen to one person. It happens to everyone around them. A 2018 study from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration found that for every person suffering from addiction, an average of 4 to 6 family members are significantly affected. Parents who stop sleeping, who check phones in the night, who count the money in their wallet every morning, who look at their child and see a stranger wearing a familiar face. Siblings who grow up in the shadow of crisis, who learn to be invisible, who carry the weight of a family's broken heart without anyone asking how they are doing. Partners who love someone who is no longer fully present, who stay because leaving feels like abandonment, who stay until staying destroys them too. Addiction is a family disease, not because families cause it, but because love does not know how to leave, even when leaving might be the only thing that helps. Here is what society does when a person becomes addicted. In most countries, it arrests them. The United States spends $50 billion per year on drug law enforcement, and yet, overdose deaths have never been higher. Portugal tried something different. In 2001, Portugal decriminalized the personal use of all drugs, not legalization, decriminalization, and redirected the money from punishment to treatment. The result? Drug-related deaths fell by 80%. HIV infections among drug users fell by 95%. Drug use among adolescents fell below the European average. The evidence is clear. Punishment does not heal addiction, it deepens it, because punishment adds shame to an already unbearable pain. And shame, as every researcher knows, is one of the most powerful drivers of continued drug use. The person who is told they are criminal, worthless, beyond help, believes it, and acts accordingly. We have built systems that punish the wound instead of healing it, and we are surprised that people keep bleeding. Of all the drugs destroying young lives today, none is more urgent than ice. Crystal methamphetamine is now present in every region of the world. In Southeast Asia, it is the most widely used illicit drug. In Pakistan, ice use among young people has increased by 900% in the last decade. 900% in one generation. What makes ice uniquely devastating for young people is its relationship with the developing brain. The adolescent brain is still building its dopamine regulation system. Ice does not just flood that system, it burns it. Young people who use ice show measurable brain damage in dopamine-producing regions within months of regular use. Not years, months. The memory loss, the paranoia, the psychosis, the inability to feel pleasure from anything natural, these are not side effects. They are the brain trying to survive something it was never designed to withstand. And the youngest users suffer the most permanent damage because they had the furthest to fall. Yes, there is always a way back. It is not easy, it is not fast, it is not a straight line, but it exists. A 2020 analysis published in the New England Journal of Medicine found that more than 75% of people who develop addiction eventually recover. 3 in 4. That is not a small number. That is most people. Recovery looks different for different people. For some, it is medication-assisted treatment, methadone, buprenorphine, medications that stabilize the brain while it heals. For some, it is therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy has shown consistent effectiveness in treating addiction by rebuilding the decision-making pathways the drug compromised. For some, it is community. The evidence on social connection and recovery is unambiguous. People who have strong relationships recover at significantly higher rates than those who are isolated. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It is connection. This is the finding that changes everything. The drug filled a hole that human connection was supposed to fill. The path out is not willpower. It is belonging. It is being seen. It is someone staying when every reasonable reason to stay has been exhausted.
If you are watching this, and you are the person inside the addiction, this is for you. You are not broken. You are wounded. There is a difference. Broken things cannot be repaired. Wounded things can heal. You did not choose the pain that led you here. You chose the only relief you could find. That is not weakness. That is being human in an unbearable situation without enough support. You deserve support, not judgment, not shame. support. And it is not too late. It is never too late. 75% of people recover. You can be one of them. If you are watching this and you are the parent, this is for you. Your love is not the problem, but love alone is not always enough. The most important thing you can do is stay. Not enable, not pretend, but stay. Stay in their life, stay in their corner. Let them know that whatever has happened, whatever they have done, whatever they have become, they are still your child, and you are still there. That knowledge has saved more lives than any intervention ever designed. If you are watching this, and you are the friend, this is for you. Do not disappear. It is the disappearing that kills people, not the drug, the isolation. The feeling that everyone who ever loved them has finally confirmed what the addiction always told them, that they are not worth staying for. Stay. Show up. Not perfectly, just consistently. Your presence is more powerful than you know. And if you are watching this and addiction has not touched your life, consider yourself fortunate. And consider the person you passed on the street today, the one who looked lost, who looked like they had given up. They were not always that person. They were once someone's child, someone's best friend, someone who had dreams before the pain came and the drug came after it. They are still that person, somewhere inside, waiting for someone to see them rather than what happened to them. This has been Prometheus' axiom. We stole the fire, now we document the ash, and sometimes in the ash we find what survived.